or call 49 51 49.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
The Mannin Line, brought to you by NetZeroMatrix.com, the Isle of Man's main net zero progress website.
Well, fast am I. Good afternoon. Welcome along to the Mannin Line for Monday, 5th of September. Alex sitting in for Andy for the next couple of days. Beth will be doing it for the rest of the week. And today, I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by the Infrastructure Minister, Chris Thomas MHK. Now, the third minister in this position within a year. We're going to talk about a variety of different topics that fall under the infrastructure umbrella, as it were. Everything from housing to the airport, the Liverpool ferry terminal. We might touch on Douglas Promenade, the bus service, you name it, it's all in there. And we'd love to hear your questions too. 66 13 68, or send us a text to 166 177. Mannin Line on air till 1. Minister, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Always delighted to be here.
Lovely to have you along on the programme. I mentioned there then that third minister within a year. So the first question that kind of comes to mind is, was this a job you wanted, or was it a case that after Tim Crookall stepped down, they couldn't find anybody else and it was a case of, come on, Chris, you've been in Comyn before, will you take the job?
No, yes, I wanted it. Initially, when the Chief Minister approached me, I insisted that whatever position I was to take, it would include housing, and eventually the way to do that was to give me the chance to look at all of the topics and matters and challenges that we have under infrastructure. Very excited to have the role and hope to stick at it for some time.
Well, let's start with housing then, because when it comes to lots of the developments on the island, and we see the big developments by the major developers, and there's always talk about how there's got to be a certain amount of affordable housing. Why aren't developers forced to build affordable housing first within their developments? Why don't we, as a government, have the spine or the guts to turn around and say, actually, all the big areas where you're going to make your massive profit margins, you can have that, but do us the duty of effectively saying you will build affordable housing first. Why can't we set that line in the sand?
We can. That's entirely, to an extent, in the hands of Department of Infrastructure. So we draw up what's called the Section 13 agreement around affordable housing. And you're right, down at Ballasalla in the major development, the affordable housing comes in the later phases, not in the earlier phases. And we could make the choice about changing.
So why didn't we?
That was before my time, but ultimately it comes down to negotiation and assertions about viability, and we've got that as well in the brownfield sites, particularly in Douglas. They've been underdeveloped, unused for far too long, and we now need to do something radical to make sure that they're used, but used properly, where we get proper affordable housing in the right places where people want to live.
So you're saying that, OK, that was in the past. In the future now, under your tenure, if that kind of situation comes up again, you will be able to enact that and say, actually, you will do affordable housing first before you go off and accrue the profits.
We've always been able to do that, and it's about negotiation between the developers and the Department for Infrastructure, of Infrastructure and Treasury ultimately, and that sort of thing's on the table. But it's not been easy for construction. One of the clips that you were showing on the we were playing on the news just now was about issues for developers in the future, and obviously they might just be pleading poor. They might really be poor, and we've got a viability assessment just about to be published, and I'll make sure that is published as soon as I possibly can. I haven't seen it as yet, but I actually want the real figures about the profitability of developers at the moment.
I was going to say, though, if people are listening to this, or of course watching it, it has been streamed on Facebook, on Manx Radio's page there, to plead the poverty of the developer is something that's not really going to wash with the public when we look over the years at the mass amount of construction that has taken place with some of these major developers. Why haven't we actually put our foot in the sand before now? Why are we turning around saying that affordable housing can be last if it appears at all?
Well, I don't want to rerun history, and I haven't been responsible for infrastructure and Section 13 agreements except as a departmental back in 2014-15. There are obviously viability issues in certain places. It's all to do with greenfields and brownfields. It's all to big developers can act with their with their money. They can do other things with their money. So I want to get inside that, and that's why Cabinet Office commissioned a viability study, a viability assessment of the possibilities, particularly for brownfield sites, but also for other Section 13 agreements. I want to see that. I haven't seen it. That'll help me understand this better. And I have had lots of discussions with developers now, recently, and also with staff in Department of Infrastructure who've been involved in those negotiations, and this is a major public policy area I plan and intend to do something about if I possibly can.
Is our planning system undemocratic? Is it broken?
The planning, I felt sorry for planners for 10 years. Planning has a good system, as I said to you. The Section 13 agreement can require affordable housing to be developed earlier.
Why do you feel sorry for planners? Because there's a big gaping distance between the Section 13 and a major developer and the everyday person who's wanting to build something, and it falls into that 80% of planning applications that the planning committee don't even get to see or judge. It's just put through by unelected officials. I
feel sorry for planners because bureaucrats in other parts around government come along and tell them what to do without any understanding of the background. I feel sorry for planners because politicians come along, particularly every 5 years after an election, and come in and announce a major new reform of planning system and do all sorts of things and promise to spend lots of money. But at the end of the day, it's about balancing the viability of development, achieving the public policy objectives, and that it's always better to have a good understanding of what's possible, and also planning law and existing planning law. So my natural feeling is to feel sorry for planners. They're between a rock and a hard place, and it doesn't help when they're often attacked from a position of ignorance.
Well, when it comes to the, you mentioned there, policies, red tape, bureaucracy, have we made it such a state now that that actually, if you're wanting to develop something, it is so difficult, it's off-putting? I mean, you're part of the Council of Ministers that have said we're going to be, as part of this island plan, we're looking to increase the population to 100,000. Our infrastructure on the island, not specifically within your department, but our general infrastructure is poor. Our government message seems to be a sort of an anti-field of dreams. You know, if you come, then we'll build it. Why are we so tied up in red tape that now you have to pay for this biosphere report, that biosphere report? You'll have lengthy delays through planning. You have to fit all the... It almost is a case that it's anti-development.
Well, I think you went from one major assertion to another one, and then back to the first one. But basically what you said then was that there's unnecessary red tape and bureaucracy. That was one big idea, and I agree. Who believes in unnecessary red tape and bureaucracy? But you know, if you have a UNESCO biosphere and you want to make sure that the wildlife and the environment and the people and the community are looked after, you need to look after them as well. The second point that you made was that our infrastructure isn't adequate for all of these people, and if that's the case, we need to do something about it, and we do. Ever since 2016, we've had an infrastructure report, and there are gaps. And one of the reasons I wanted to have the infrastructure role is to make sure that the public understands where we do have gaps, what we can do about them, how quickly we can do something about them, how much it's going to cost, and fill those gaps as the population changes. We all have to remember, though, that there won't be 15,000 people next week. But if we need more people to staff our GP surgeries and our hospital and our social care system and our buses and our airport and so on, we need more people. I mean, even builders, it seems, are short of staff. So we have a massive problem on the island. I'm not naive. I'm not going to say we haven't got a problem. It's not all wonderful here at the moment. We've got massive challenges that we've got to address. Partly it's people, partly it's infrastructure, partly it's getting the balance right between what you allege is unnecessary red tape and bureaucracy, but also making sure that we don't ruin what's good in the island.
Well, you mentioned there the biosphere and protecting nature. Was all the requirement to have all these wildlife reports and the biosphere reports in place before we got biosphere status? Or did we get biosphere status and now it's become a license to print money for organisations to have to be charged for this report, charged for that report? Because the question begs, once again, from a point of view of ignorance, why do we have to suddenly go through all these hoops after we got the accreditation that says we were doing things right in the first place?
So it's a very good question, and nothing changed legally through the application of biosphere for biosphere status and when we got biosphere status. So the planning law didn't change, the environmental law didn't change. It was just a statement of what we were doing already. So to answer your question, if it is the case that we've now created unnecessary reporting, that nothing's changed in the law through the acquisition of biosphere status.
So I return to my original question then. Is the planning system broken? If nothing's changed through the law that requires this, why are we requiring it? Why are we having to ask? Once again, I'm not talking big developers here who've got deep pockets and lots of people who can do this. I'm talking about the everyday person in the street.
You'll have to be very specific with this allegation. So give me an example.
No, the example is that if you want to maybe build on a property, on a greenfield site, you will be required, obviously, to put in your planning statement. You will be required, obviously, to consult with highways, as you'd imagine, and then you're expected to get a report, a biosphere report on the status of the land.
Okay.
Has that always been the case?
Nothing's changed in planning law as a direct consequence of UNESCO biosphere status. If this is in a sensitive site because there's wildlife, that's always been the case at the sensitive site aspect. So Manx Radio, for instance, Manx Radio at one point had an application for a huge extension. It no longer has the funding for that application, and it's withdrawn the planning permission it got.
Yep.
And that was all to do with the interaction of that site in part and a site of special scientific interest to do with wildlife. That nothing's changed in the law. That was always the case. It still is the case. If you're going to build on a floodplain, I would like to think that there would be law in place to make sure that people just can't mess up their building and also other people's building by building on a floodplain. So we need to be very specific, and I do agree with you completely that unnecessary red tape and bureaucracy is unnecessary, but we need to make sure that we're not actually ruining anything else by not asking questions. And I don't accept that everybody's got to put forward a biosphere statement as part of the planning application. A big part of planning reform over the last decade has been making more and more things permitted development, so you can change use inside town centres now without making a permitted development. You can put in lots of environmentally friendly alternative energies without making a planning application because it's permitted development. There's a general thrust over 10 years that planners have done is to put things more and more in offices rather than at the planning committee, to take things out of the bureaucracy of preparing planning committees and agendas and reports and minutes.
Well, that's back to my question before. Is that right that we've put more and more planning into the hands of people who are unelected? The planning committee's role used to be to examine all planning issues. Only 20% of applications are now dealt with by the planning committee. Is that right?
You can't have it both ways, Alex. And once things get political, you end up with reports and you end up with things be changing their mind. I think a good approach to planning is to make it absolutely clear as possible in law and in procedure what will get permitted development and what won't. And then if something's controversial, like a huge new development on greenfields or like a fundamental change in how affordable housing is dealt with, or a huge change in terms of floodplains, that's the sort of thing that definitely needs to go to the planning committee, if not to the Council of Ministers. I'm not a big fan of things going to the Council of Ministers for planning decision, but we do have this procedure of the Council of Ministers making national planning decisions. And I think we're aligned. We don't want unnecessary red tape and bureaucracy, but that comes from depoliticising things and trying to have clear policy and practice so that most decisions can be made without controversy in reports. And then if there is going to be controversy and an argument, we need to have the report writing sensible and so on. So, another case that I know something about because it's in the constituencies down on the North Quay. It's just a travesty. It's a shame that we've now got half of our valuable North Quay and Douglas just covered up because of argument going on about that site. I think surely we can all agree that a decision's got to be made, and then development either happens or it doesn't happen following the demolition, that either happens or it doesn't happen. And to do that, to get to that decision, we need to have consensus about it, and we absolutely need to make sure that the law has been followed.
Well, I was going to move on from planning, but that example you just raised there, obviously we're aware that online there is a petition towards having that site developed by the developer. Surely, according to our planning policies, what is there in law, etc., and our procedures, a petition means nothing, does it? Surely, if it doesn't fit the policies and where that area is zoned for, and if it's got registered building status, it doesn't matter how many people sign a petition, does it?
You're right. It's the argument and the law and policy that trumps it. But it is important to get people involved in planning decisions like that. But you're right. Ultimately, that decision will be made on according to policy and procedure. But what I just said was that we absolutely clearly need to make a final decision as soon as possible, because it's ridiculous where we are now.
Okay. I've got a few messages coming in. Please get in touch. The Infrastructure Minister Chris Thomas here with me till 1 o'clock. You can call 66 13 68. You can text or WhatsApp to 166 177. Andy's sent a message in on WhatsApp. Thank you, Andy. Saying, please, can you ask, following the Ransom Tribunal latest hearing, how is Minister Thomas going to ensure that all those making decisions affecting Isle of Man residents behind the scenes will be accountable for their actions and not be allowed to resign and be without the powers of the Isle of Man courts? Now, Andy doesn't state any examples there, but I presume he's referring to people unlike yourself who aren't democratically accountable within the department.
Well, I can't. There are some important issues raised about accountability of the Manx Care Board, of staff members, of politicians around the Ransom Tribunal and the law case that's associated with it. I have followed the case very closely. I have attended some of the tribunal hearings. But let's step back to the generality. It is very, very important that civil service, public service more generally, is accountable inside the political process. It's also very important that we protect public servants and civil servants according to the norms of employment law and good human relations. So both of those two things always have to be balanced. And I'm a mature politician, I think now. I think I can call myself that, having been in it nearly 10 years, and I'm absolutely certain that in the Department of Infrastructure, we're doing everything we can to both respect public servants and to protect them from politics where it's necessary to do so, and also to make sure that we set up governance mechanisms and accountability mechanisms and fair financing decision mechanisms so that we can actually address the problems we have in infrastructure to do with buses, the airport infrastructure, more generally flood risks, all of the things that we tackle, sea services, terminals, in a fair way, and public servants come to work and enjoy what they do because they're respected properly and they're challenged properly.
Where are we in terms of the recruitment for the new chief executive and the new director of public transport?
Well, the RTLC has an application. There might be more than one role as part of that settlement, and in the right time, the post will be advertised. But you're the sort of guy who knows that there are questions going on at the RTLC about certain roles. But ultimately, public transport has got three parts. If you look at it objectively, there's one part which is the bus service. Mm-hmm. There's the part that you're passionate about, which is heritage rail, and then there's the fleet services. And I said when I first took the job on the 14th of June that two initial priorities in terms of time, not necessarily in terms of importance, were the buses and the air. And I've been doing loads, as have lots of senior civil servants, and through the last 3 months, and we've made good progress on setting up projects around that sort of question.
And the new chief executive for the department?
So we don't have very many permanent chief executives across government. We also have an interim chief secretary, and that's a very good question, and the public will know at the right time through the adverts once decisions have been made about future governance of Department of Infrastructure in the specific case that you asked about, and more generally across government. We're in a time of transition, and that's why I was absolutely adamant with myself that I had to join in, despite some pretty fundamental disagreements with the Island Plan and some directions in which government are going. I've joined in because I'm a maturer politician and one of the more senior ones, and I do have nearly 10 years of experience of these sorts of very important issues about getting public policy change where it needs to be and meeting the huge challenges we have.
That was an excellent politician's answer, Chris. So basically, in terms of the new chief executive and director of public transport, wait and see. I can't tell you anything.
Lots of discussions are going on, and I think I've hinted it to you that the division is on the table in various ways, and there are projects going on. But if you want to present it like that, that would be the sort of mischievous way that the media often like to do to draw attention to their story.
Oh, what an accusation! Right, Howard is on the phone line. Howard, you're live with the Infrastructure Minister.
Hello, Alex. Good afternoon, Minister. I know it's an old chestnut, but once the promenade was commenced, plans were in place for the horse trams to go from one end to the other. And midstream, it wasn't yourself, it was a previous minister, decided somewhere in the system to remove a large sum of money from that contract. and allocated elsewhere. And if my memory serves me right, when you came back after the election last year, you made a promise that inquiries would be made and the public would be informed. Well, that was when? Last September or November, when the elections. We're a year down the line and we're still none the wiser. And as I said the other day to Andy, £1 million is an awful lot of money to disappear and never be explained. When will this come out to the public? When will it come out to the public? Will the horse trams be eventually run from one end of the promenade to the other? The reason what brought it up is I was up at the Camera Obscura yesterday, with a lot of visitors, and the number of people that asked me, why have the horse trams stopped at Broadway? And why aren't they going all the way to the end? And these were people who've come on holiday to the island. And they weren't all in one group, they were individual or twos and threes, and this question came up. Also, and it's an old thing, where have all the festoon lights gone as will have been taken down? Oh, that was the first thing we loved to see when we sailed in on the ship or flying in. We could see it at night. Well, all these things are a gradual disintegration of the Isle of Man, and it's just becoming another section of the UK.
Okay, Howard, we'll let Mr. Thomas answer the first one on that. So basically what Howard is saying there is, Tynwald instructed the departments to lay the tracks across the full length of the prom. They gave the department the money to do so. And then without recourse to Tynwald, the Highways Department cancelled the tramway tracks from Broadway to the sea terminal and spent it on the other things. So is this misuse of public funds? Is this going to be facing an investigation?
It's not misuse of public funds, and the investigation has taken place in as much as the Public Accounts Committee has identified how much money it was from in evidence from the Department of Infrastructure. That's all published as part of the Public Accounts Committee report. I don't think it was quite $1 million. I think it's more like 750,000, nearly $1 million from memory. But Alex, along with another group of journalists, media people, gave some excellent interviews when we relaunched the horse trams as far as where the track finishes at the moment, back at the end of July. And the interview that I gave then basically said that no work would commence on the reinstatement of the horse tram lines to where they were at a certain point in history, because and people keep telling me that the horse trams have actually stopped at Broadway in the past. Most recently in history they went all the way to the sea terminal, but there have been lots of endpoints. But anyhow, I've said that no work will commence until winter 2023, and for that to happen a decision's got to be made in summer 2023. If a decision isn't made in summer 2023, it'll be later than winter 2023. And to make that decision, I've got the Department of Infrastructure's got to make a proposal to Treasury, get Treasury concurrence. It's then got to be put on Tynwald business order paper by Council of Ministers.
But Howard's point is, you've had that money. If you don't want to call it misuse of public funds, it's interesting that a department to be given money for a specific project and then just spend it on something else without coming back to Tynwald. You've had that money. I mean, it seems to stick two fingers up at Tynwald, which is the department had the money. The department stated in the Hansard in the debate on December 2017, which I have in front of me, is that the department's stated objective was to run the tramway to the Broadway, and then for a corridor to allow for a future extension of the tramway between the Sea Terminal and War Memorial. So it's the department's stated objective from, what are we talking, almost 6 years ago, that this is what they wanted to happen. And it almost seems like they've kicked it in the long grass to make it happen. Why do we have to wait to 2023? And surely it's only 750,000 you said there. Is that how much we're going to be asking for to do it?
It's likely to be more than that because of when the budget. But essentially, the Promenade project has had issues right from the word go, and in a way, they're similar to those in our discussion about planning previously. Now, the Department of Infrastructure had a clear plan, which was overruled politically 2014, 15, 16. My first ever amendment in Tynwald when I first got elected back in 2013 was that I tried to say that we should actually know what we were going to do to the whole of the promenade before we started it. And the experienced politicians at that time said I was talking rubbish. It was much better to do it phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. And the rest is history. We'd be much better to have a clear agreement about what we're going to do rather than politicians coming along, making a good speech and the policy fundamentally changing. That's the way to end up with a bad project implementation rather than a good project implementation. So it'll be more than 750,000. The tram corridor is left in place. There is a plan to finish it all the way either to the War Memorial or all the way to the sea terminal that's being worked up with modern costs, and then I'll consider it with the rest of the department, and then we'll have to consider it with Treasury.
You've already got the rail in stock for this, haven't you? That was announced at the beginning of the project. Can you confirm for me the rail is still in stock? It's still stacked down the harbour.
The rail, you can probably see it out of the window here if you go and look in the right direction. The rail is on South Quay in the yard over there.
So what is the reluctance? Because standing back from the public point of view, you've said there the department wanted this, but then politics got in the way. Well, surely that's the will of the people. Your department is there to...
You're a fan of the Heritage Rail, and you're a fan of the horse trams, as I am. It's an important part of culture and heritage. But the biggest political imperative from the council ministers, especially in the period after I resigned in 2020-2021, was to finish the promenade inside the revised budgets, because finances are fragile and tight in the Isle of Man, and so therefore decisions were made. So, for instance, masses of extra expenditure had to be incurred underground because things were discovered by Manx Utilities about things that they needed to do underground.
So why do we have to have constrained budgets over here, but we have empty, bottomless pockets for a ferry terminal in Liverpool? Because if you look at the prom now,
we haven't got empty pockets. It's just we need a ferry terminal, and essentially, look, we've got to get better structured in the way we talk, Manx Radio, but also the newspapers and Jeff and all of the other commentators. We've got to have proper understanding of where we are, where we have been, and where we need to get to, and that's what I will do, and that's what I'm trying to begin to do today. So in a week's time, Manx Radio has already accepted my invitation to go up to meet the new director in the airport to get proper understanding about all of the issues with the airport, and we will be doing that about the promenade over this winter. And obviously Heritage Rail fans and Heritage Rail enthusiasts, tram enthusiasts, will be arguing that this is imperative. People will use that quote in the debate when it gets to Tynwald, but there are many other people who've got many other issues on the promenade. I've had an incredibly good meeting with Douglas Borough Council, and what we're working on together is a prioritisation of the use of their funds and our funds to do all the things that still need to be done on the promenade, balanced against all the things that need to be done around the rest of the island. And just to give you an example of that, to come back to the excellent question about the festoon lighting, Douglas Borough Council is responsible for the new lights. I'm not walking away with them. They're interesting. They're modern. The festoon lights, didn't all just disappear. They weren't all thrown away. If you want to see them from Douglas Head, just look down and you'll see them along the North Quay. That's where many of the festoon lights are. And the vision of the leader and the councillors and the officers at Douglas Borough Council was a new type of lighting for the promenade and a new type of lights. That's a fact. We gave permission from DOI local government unit for the borrowed funds to install those. We're still working on finishing them off in different parts. We're working with Douglas Borough Council on their garden wall and our sea wall. We're working on finishing the promenade pavement, and we're also working on completing the work on the horse trams. And I just want to talk about that properly rather than just aggressively fighting back over past ground. We are where we are. The promenade is nearly finished. We're now we're concluding the promenade capital expenditure. Then we've got to have new capital expenditure for new things, new revenue expenditure, and maintaining what we've got is also very important for you, Alex. You and Charles Gard have made these videos about the horse, the railings along the promenade. You've posted on your Facebook about the bus shelters, about bus stops. This is all important, and we need to basically make sure we spend the money properly once, wisely, and be able to maintain it, because anything less is tragic these days, because finances in the Isle of Man are fragile, and we need to make sure we prioritise with consensus with the Manx public and plan well and make up our mind and stick to it.
Okay, Chris. I didn't challenge you on a lot of stuff there, but I will now. When it comes to the promenade, the issues that people have with it, number one, I didn't mention a horse tramway, I said tramway, because at the moment, the Isle of Man government seems to be almost allergic to coming up with any sort of green actions when it comes to utilising rail transport, and not having a rail corridor to surely our main ferry port would be a priority. In terms of the quality of the promenade, I made a note on my way here cycling to work this morning that the puddles and flooding by design on the pedestrian crossings, black and white bricks laid in the wrong places on zebra crossings, parking markings outside the Villa Marina not in place, crumbling red concrete. It's not just cracked now, it's crumbling. It's been left. Okay, the wonky lampposts. The walkway is a dreadful mess. It looks like it's derelict. The railings are rusty and bent. The rusty and dilapidated bus shelters, you've mentioned that.
So we agreed. Let me
What's
jump in.
been done
We
in
agreed.
action?
So we need the DOI, Treasury, Tim Wood, but also Douglas Borough Council needs to agree a plan to complete that. Step number 1 is to negotiate with the contractor on the promenade to finalise those works. And if there are defects...
Have they finished now? Golden gone? Is that it? They finished their contract?
The project's in the process of being finished and finalised, and I'll be making announcements about that. So we're negotiating about those sorts of things, defects and costs and responsibilities to do with all those things many of those things that you mentioned. In terms of the assertion about the tramways and the use for commuting and for alternative energy, a lot of gratitude then should be left in the person of the the former public transport director, in as much as he was absolutely adamant enough space was going to be left around the tramways so that they could be used in the future by battery electric type vehicles going down the tramway. So that's quite controversial, because we've ended up with 1.8 metre wide parking bays rather than 2.4 metre wide parking bays, so that we can get the best out of the prom for public transport. And in terms of the all the issues about the lights and the seawall and the railings and the promenade walkway, isn't that what I just said? I'm trying to work with Douglas Borough Council so we can work out what needs to be done first in terms of not messing each other's at work. So we have a well organised plan for 2 or 3 years to finish all of these things that everybody in the island accepts will be money well spent to achieve the objective that we want. And all that came from Howard's question. Thank you very much, Howard.
Thank you, Howard. Yes, that's got us on a topic. I'm going to go through a few texts now, and I promise, Chris, we'll move on from the prom. But Jane has been on it said, Chris, the island is shabby, the prom is depressing, it's a mess. Your department should have done something properly the first time. Robbie says the horse trams will never go to the sea terminal. He's just hinted at the War Memorial. In fairness, Robbie, the original proposal that's in Hansard was to the War Memorial, and then it was Chris Robertshaw, from my memory, that
Bill Malarkey, perhaps. But anyhow, it doesn't matter.
It's in Hansard. One of the two set out an amendment, which it was Mr. Robertshaw to insert the words "a new single trap to be laid between the sea terminal."
Okay.
And
another debate was Bill Malarkey, who proposed that they should go all the way to the sea terminal.
So let's have a look. Thank you to an Alex, who says, if the trams are to continue to the sea terminal, then why have the DOI backfilled the corridor with 4 feet of subsoil? That it should have been filled with hard coil, then topped with soil. I think that's a bit too much detail, really, for
I don't think
minister level.
It's not 4 feet of topsoil of soil, and I don't think that's the case at all.
Thank you. What else have we got here? Thank you, G, for asking about the Laxey wheel. I'm pretty sure that doesn't fall under your department, or does it fall under terms of maintenance of the Laxey wheel and DOI?
Well, I think progress has been made on the Laxey wheel. I'm a big fan of culture and heritage. Money needs to be spent on so many places there.
Okay, a couple of things in terms of the highway code. I've got a couple of messages in, one asking when the highway code is going to come in line with the UK in terms of giving space to cyclists, etc. And then another message from B saying, when will we put some rules and fines in place for cyclists? We've built multiple cycle paths now, and they ride 2 or 3 abreast in a narrow road, causing significant delays. Shouldn't cyclists be required to use the roads properly, or they exist or face a fine? I think that's possibly long. There's a UK report that's come out thinking they're talking about putting number plates and demanding insurance from cyclists. Are we going to see any changes?
Yeah. So the former minister said that the Manx Highway Code would come more in line with the UK Highway Code. That's work in progress. We're planning our legislative programme, and secondary legislation for highways is part of that. So, for instance, e-bikes, e-scooters, cycle registration, as you've said, Grant Shapps has allowed people to think about this more in the UK, and the Welsh Government particularly has taken that up. So that's certainly on my in tray. The whole process of vehicle licensing is also up there. So for 3 or 4 years, I've campaigned for the ability to pay for vehicle licensing for 6 months rather than for 12 months, and that's coming to you soon, I hope. Also paying on a monthly basis, and also paying in a different way. I don't think the Isle of Man is perhaps ready for a really bold approach to vehicle licensing, but certainly we need to address some issues to do with licensing, which will relate to the issues of cycles. So we haven't got time to discuss all the details today, probably, unless it's of particular interest. But what I would say is it's important that we understand that all these issues have multi-dimensions, and we need to have a consensus about where we're going before we start going what's been wrong for so long in Manx politics, Manx public policy to do with infrastructure and so much else, is we start something, then we change our mind two years down the road. What we absolutely need to do is agree where we're going and then stick with it. Otherwise we end up wasting money and getting all arguing about what should have happened 6 years ago, 25 years ago in some cases, whereas they did happen. Now we've got to make sure that we agree where we're going, at least enough of us, so that there's a consensus, and then stick with it, and that way we get better outcomes.
Okie dokie, we're live with the Infrastructure Minister Chris Thomas. We're going to take a call from Charlie just after this.
Here at Q-Plus, we're not just blue, we're green. From smart boilers to heat pumps, Q-Plus supply products from the leading brands in renewable energy for a cleaner, greener home. So call into Q-Plus on Snugborough Trading Estate, the island's largest independent plumbing and heating merchants for trade and retail. Or call 673 131 to talk to our friendly experts about the latest cost-effective products in home heating and find out what we can do for you at Q-Plus.
Financial undergrads, are you seeking a graduate or trainee role? Then make sure to visit orchardrecruitment.com. Our fully responsive website enables you to quickly apply for jobs, upload and store your CV, manage job alerts, and chat live with our expert recruiters. If you're studying finance, economics, business, accounting, or actuarial science subjects, have graduated or are graduating this summer, make sure your graduate job or scheme is secured with orchardrecruitment.com. A refreshing change.
Small changes count. Lower rainfall this season is seriously affecting our island's reservoirs, rivers, and wildlife. We need your help to support our environment and make small changes that count. A hosepipe ban is currently in force. Any non-essential use of our precious water through a hosepipe or other apparatus has to stop. Manx water is the only water we have, so we need to make every drop count. Visit manxutilities.im for advice and more water-saving tips.
Imagine yourself on a dream holiday worth £15,000. Imagine the luxury, the views, the memories you'd make. Imagine if it only cost you £20. Rebecca House Children's Hospice are making it a reality with help from Richmond Travel. Tickets just £20 each. Get yours now from hospice.org.im/holiday by calling 672222 or from the Strand Street or Superstore Hospice shops.
Station, Manx Radio.
The Mannin Line, brought to you by NetZeroMatrix.com, helping Isle of Man companies and citizens to understand net zero targets and a green future.
Live until 1 o'clock with the Infrastructure Minister, Chris Thomas MHK. Thanks for coming in, Chris. Now, Charlie's on the line with a question for you. Charlie, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Charlie.
Alex, Minister, I'm one of your constituents. A number of things, really. Why is the Manx Grand Prix being reduced to 9 days?
I think, that's not
In fairness, Charlie, that's really for Department for Infrastructure,
Chris,
Department for Enterprise Control.
The reason I was saying that, driving round, it's been very popular, the Manx Grand Prix, but the state of the hedgerows around the TT course, uncut, untidy. Now, in June, TT, a friend of mine spoke to a mature woman rider in Ramsey, and she said it was fantastic to be back on the island after 3 years, but hasn't it gone tardy?
Well, we've been having people staying with us over the Manx Grand Prix. I as well as being a fan of Heritage Rail, I'm also a fan of the events, the motorcycle events, motorsport, and all that. I don't know a lot about it. I don't have classic cars and things like that either. But I'm in the infrastructure department, and I know of things that are going on. I think in part, I suppose I'll answer two questions. I'll give two answers to your question. Why are the hedges unkempt? I think in part we have to accept its nature, because there was dry for a long time and then it started raining, and nature does respond and it does grow very, very quickly, and we did close the roads and we did everything we can, but we always end up against something in the Isle of Man, which is resources. There's only a few days and we've got to do everything, so they prioritise areas where it's a safety issue for riders, rather than making sure that every area of hedges is chopped back. It's a good time of year to do hedges, but ultimately nature's going to have its effect through the autumn and the winter. And the second point is that I do think the whole issue of how we maintain roads, how we go out into the countryside and work with local authorities or other people in terms of gullies and hedges and all that is under review, and I will be making major initiative announcements about that in coming months.
Why is the anecdotal, and once again I've got personal experience of this, I've reported a pothole 7 times that's made a friend of mine's car go flat, that why are our roads so badly maintained? That is the general opinion of people, that roads are in a poor state in the island. What's that become? Is it lack of funding? Is it the fact that we don't have high enough standards that we have to meet? What's the reasons?
I think it's lack of funding. So the Director of Highways has made a very persuasive case to Tynwald committees about the fact that the maintenance budget has been savaged in the last 10 years. It's also lack of people. So the amount of staff in the Department of Infrastructure has gone down compared to and that's not the case in any other department of government. It's also true in places like the Post Office, Public Sector Pensions Authority to a small extent, but in the departments of government, DOI staff's gone down. So it's both money, it's both people, and so therefore, and also there's been a big move towards capital projects as well, because it's convenient. You can spend the family silver and pay for stuff rather than paying for maintenance, and it's all caught up with us. And that's the sort of debate that I want the public to have, so that we can make sure that the future of Isle of Man infrastructure is having the right stuff when we need it, and also maintaining the stuff that we have, and that goes all the way from roads to schools to GP surgeries and all of the things that we need.
So is this something that, effectively, picking up what you've said there, in terms of government, yes, we are bad at maintaining stuff. We spend tens of £millions on a beautiful project and then we just leave it until it's in a state where it needs...
In the last 10 years, that's my suggestion. That's why I wanted to go to infrastructure, because that's not sustainable. It's sticking plasters. The other point I would make is, I don't know who you told about these potholes, but you might have mentioned it to a politician who came into a radio show.
It was on the app. It was on the app.
And that's what I want to recommend to people. We are really focusing on encouraging people to use customer services and to report things on the app, and so they get a proper reply and a proper timescale. And that's what I'll be saying over and over again more. Rather than just telling Tim Crookle until recently, or me now, rather than just complaining to your MHK and taking all the time, make sure you put it down on the app. And if the right thing's not done about it, then that's the point of complaining about the process. The best thing to do is to tell the people who can actually do something about it in the right way.
I will just state for now, I've reported it 4 times on the app in the last 9 months, still nothing.
But then we have to go into the other point. Is the pothole that you're reporting the most important pothole to fix, and has it been fixed in any way? What are you calling for? Are you calling for the whole of the road to be re-engineered? Are you calling for
bit of tarmac in the hole would be nice. Just a bit of tarmac in the hole.
Okay, and is it on an adopted road? It's
yes.
Definitely on an adopted road. So anyhow, I want to work with the public, because we have a problem. I've acknowledged the problem on your air. I want to work with the public to report things in the right way, to get the right amount of money, to get the right resources, to do something about it, because we all need to be proud of our island. And got to be honest, I'm not proud of our island any more than your caller is now.
Tim's next on the line. Tim, you're live with the Minister. Good afternoon.
Hi, Minister.
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. I run a couple of hotels on the promenade, and I just wanted, I'm sure you're probably aware of it, but the state of the seats on the bus stops, they were all taken away during the promenade refurbishment. They were all returned, and no work was done when they were away. I'm not asking for brand new bus stops, but I'm just saying that the seats that people sit on, a lot of our guests get the bus to the airport, and they have to sit on these, and I've had people coming in with rust on their backsides. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Well, thank you very much for reporting that, and you make a very good point. We're not going to focus...
All it needs is a lick of paint, or, I don't know, powder coating, however you do it.
Yeah,
but
not quite.
It's showing contempt, basically, to the poor, to passengers getting the bus, basically. It's ridiculous.
Completely agree that something needs to be done. I have heard of a report that's coming my way very soon about a technological solution to bus stops outside along the promenade and elsewhere, and completely accept
I don't think you need a report, Minister. I think you need someone with some paint.
Well, that's exactly that, and that there is a low cost alternative that's been now identified along the lines that you suggest. That's been that came up at the public transport division meeting that I attended last week, and I think something's going to happen quite soon as long as there's funds there.
Just listening to that last comment there, do you feel there's a possibility of in the Tynwald bubble or the government bubble being out of touch with the public, where you talk about reports, policies?
Well, no, hang on.
And he's basically saying, why can't you get someone out there with a wire brush and a can of paint?
You both heard it one way, which is the normal way that particularly in August every year, you spin the DOI presentation. A report just means something I can sign so that money can be spent on something. Okay, it has to come to a divisional meeting. We haven't got bucket loads of money. We haven't got huge numbers of people. We've got to prioritise them, and I have accepted that it's the bus stops along our £30 million expenditure are not adequate. Bus shelters as well. And
but you keep on throwing this accusation that we're spinning something.
We're not talking about a KPMG report. We're not talking about millions of report. We're just talking about something for the right person, the right director to sign. And I'm advised that there's a low cost solution that's coming forward that's going to be worked on in the near future. That's what I've said.
Yeah. Outside that though, you do keep on making this accusation that the media are spinning this and spinning that. I'm trying to put it in the context of the person in the street who says. You mentioned there, we've got a divisional meeting on this. A person in the street does look at something and go, why can't they get someone down with a wire brush and a can of paint as that example?
Well, let's give an example of this.
Yeah.
A story that came up in August when I actually was away for 10, 12, 14 days, I forget exactly how long it was all about your favourite horse tram tracks, which are now enabled for electric use in the future because they've got the right distance between them. It's completely in public that the inspectors of the railway, taking into account health and safety at work legislation, taking into account running and so on, advocated that we needed to get the running surface of the horse tram tracks sorted before they were used extensively. From now on, they'll be maintained by the wheels going on. As you've said previously, the horse tram tracks were bought 2015 or thereabouts for 200,000. At that time, they were second-hand. They were from the Mersey tram system. Mm-hmm. They were bought at auction. At the time, they would have cost 800,000 or 900,000 to purchase. Looking back through the media, now they would cost 1.7 million pounds to purchase. So we've saved whatever you want to call it, hundreds of thousands of pounds on buying these second-hand rails and using them. And we got over a German contractor that had specialist equipment that did it. We paid them less than £50,000 for 2 weeks' work by 5 blokes. And FOI went in and it became 67,000, which is to do with all the add-ons on top of it and so on. And the whole sort of story now is DOI wasting money. How is that? We're just actually doing a practical thing. It'll cost money to do a low-cost solution for the bus stops. We need to work together. I'm not criticising you, Alex. I'm not criticising the media. I'm just saying that I'm working with you from now on as much as I possibly can to make sure there's proper understanding about what's happened, what can happen, what the costs are, to get a consensus about the future. And that's my media plan. And I'm certainly trying very hard to use this as a launch of that approach to these various problems. I really appreciate the call about the bus trams, and it's very important that we have a good prom. And thank you very much for continuing in business despite all of the trials as a tourism operator on the prom. And apologies to you for 3 or 4 years of even longer, in fact, of having to put up with things.
Okay, Tim, thanks very much for your call on that one. I'm going to quickly get to the airport in a moment there. Just when you said the health and safety nature there, to put it straight then, it was the acoustics of the noise of riding.
There are all these issues of noise, but it's more than that. It was just about having a good running surface. But my main point is we saved hundreds of thousands by getting over, and some German people who came over for 2 weeks, worked in a sort of quite dangerous environment in the middle of the road with specialist equipment, and did something once that won't need to be done again. And so the net cost was we saved 700,000. That should have been the headline, but I was on holiday and it's not the most important issue in the world. But now I want to make sure that we begin to understand heritage rail in that way. Look, come on, Alex, you're an enthusiast. You could be running all this quite soon. Over the years, people have called for heritage rail to learn from people like you running the Groudle Railway. And what would you do in these situations? We need to have the public's going to support our heritage rail. We need to get together and work out what's important in the island and work work out, make sure we do things efficiently.
I like the question. I would have laid the rails in bitumen like every other tramway across the
And that
rest
might
of the
be
world.
the point. I'm not going to say that we didn't make mistakes. Quite obviously, we corrected that mistake. That was an error. Whether it was the designer's fault or the contractor's fault or the or whatever, that to me that's happened now, and we fixed the issue. But we've still actually got issues around the red corridor that need to be closed off in the final contract. Airport, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, you asked me a question, I'll answer it. That's fine. The airport. Obviously, it was named as the third worst airport in the UK because of terrible delays. I mean, many you must know friends and family who always quote that they were meant to be on the EasyJet service from Gatwick. Now, we understand that the air traffic control at Ronaldsway recently lost 2 further controllers. That's reduced the complement to 6.5 out of 15, which should be on the roster. Is this a chronic situation we're in now? Because that surely is a major operating deficiency of, once again, if we're trying to attract people to the island, that airport needs to be efficient, it needs to be known as being reliable. Most people now, which is great for the steam packet, they go away by boat to guarantee they're going to get there because they don't trust.
Yeah. So that ranking is not new news. It's been re-energised recently, but it was data that the CA published, as far as I remember, up till the end of June. It's not only about delays. I think it was purely mathematical cancellations, and obviously when you don't have very many flights in and out, some disruption in May and June would have had a huge impact on the data. But the basic point I'm making, and I'm going back to my approach to media, is we've invited you down on the 14th of September to meet the new airport director. I'll be there. There'll be other people there. We're going to invite you around the airport. We're going to begin a process, and it's not only air traffic control, it's also the scheduling of airlines. We've got a publication coming up shortly which will help people understand that better. There are many sorts of other issues around that are affecting it, and I wanted to let the airport director settle in after he's moved to the north of the Isle of Man to get to understand the issues, and you can expect great things which will begin to be launched on the 14th of September when we've invited you all up from the media to the airport for our press engagement.
We look forward to meeting Mr. Cobb. It'll be fantastic.
It's more than that. It's about the future of the airport, and we'll discuss the details of what was going on in May and June in terms of the Logan Air flights, the EasyJet flights.
Can you confirm with me, though, my original statement of...
I can confirm that we've got one of the issues is to do with the air traffic controllers, but we now publish I think it's called the NOTAMs. They're available in a more of a user-friendly way, and obviously it suits some people to blame everything on the air traffic controllers. We're not in a great place with the air traffic control system. There's lots of options that we've got, and we'll begin to discuss those in a more organised way, because I want good focus on the real past, the real current situation and challenges in the future in an engaged way, and that's why we've invited you all to the airport on the 14th of September.
So the current situation, 6.5 effectively controllers, and you've got a plan in order to bring that back up to its operational roles of 15.
There are lots of options around this, and there's not just air traffic controllers, there's the people who work with them. There's not just one type of air traffic control. There are different sorts of things involved in air traffic control. I'm not going to get, all of a sudden in the island we might have 25 different airport directors all knowing exactly what to do. I want to channel all the expertise from those people, but remember we actually only have one airport director, the airport director. We have a project around this which he's leading on. I'm absolutely delighted he moved to the Isle of Man, settled in nicely, and what we've done is he's meeting people, talking to people now, and we've arranged a press briefing in September for you.
Well, we look forward to hearing of those improvements that are coming. Finally, Julian, rights of way. You've got about a minute to talk to the Minister. Good afternoon, Julian.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Minister.
Good afternoon.
Very quick one. If there's ever an intention to have commercial onshore wind turbines on the island, what consideration will you give to loss of public rights of way, like footpaths, cycle paths and bridle ways, along with, of course, the big construction roads that will have to be cut up to the site?
No, it's a very good perspective, and as you say, DOI has a paramount role in terms of highways. So already in my 2 or 3 Tynwalds, because I've got one coming up that I know what's on the order paper, I've had a few public rights of way variations. So it's an important point, and the point you make is valid. We've also got the proposal for 20 megawatts of onshore energy, and I'm interested to see what's proposed to us.
Thank you very much, Minister Thomas. Obviously, that topic could keep us going all afternoon. You've been listening to the Mannin Line Live with Chris Thomas MHK, the Infrastructure Minister. I'm sure you'll agree there's 1,001 topics we could have gone through.
Thank you for having me in to begin to talk about them, and looking forward to talking with you more about them in coming months.
Definitely, we'll definitely have you back. Thank you very much, Chris. This programme is available for you to watch again online at Manx Radio's Facebook page. It'll be available as a podcast to download at manxradio.com as well. Coming up next, Christy DeHaven with 1 to 3. I shall be back tomorrow on the Mannin Line. It'll be open line from 12 through until 1. For all of those texts we didn't get to, I'm sorry. We will get them read, and we will, of course, read some of them out tomorrow afternoon.